So, ladies and gentlemen, what is Volkswagen all about? Volkswagen are a lot of brands, as you can see. One is Volkswagen, the other one is Audi, Seat, Skoda, Bentley, Bugatti, Lamborghini, Porsche, Scania, MAN, and our commercial vehicles. The majority of the brands you know, but I'm sure not all of you know that all of the brands are brands of the Volkswagen Group. We talk about more than 500,000 people directly and 2.5 million indirectly. So in total, more than 3 million people are depending from us. We have more than 90 plants. We are having presence in more than 153 markets and more than 200 models. And we come then to the deliveries of last year just to show. So we've sold last year a little bit more than 8.2 million cars. I will not go in all of the details because I think for the interesting people, you can see that in the internet as well. But nearly all of our brands have had a record in 2011. So what are our strategic goals? And then I'll come back a little bit to the end of the presentation. What is entrepreneurship happening in a so big company? One is clearly we want to be the leader in the automotive business, which means leading in customer satisfaction, which means as well being very strong with the people, top employer, which means as well having profits, and profits not only to give it to our shareholders, but have the base to invest, and last but not least, to make a small volume. Target is more than 10 million, seems to be feasible, in 2018 as a target. But this is not enough. We need to be much more than that. We need to have a clear logic of substantial growth and in social responsibility. We are responsible for 3 million people. So that is how it works. 3 million people who are working, and if you count their families, we talk about 10 million. What is the market about? What you see here very easily, the market is about to grow from 2011 to 2018. So we believe that the market worldwide will come to 105, 110 million cars a year. Please, all the other numbers I will not comment. Important here is that China will play one of the key roles in the development in the market. The region here, we talk about the so-called AGCC countries, so how we name it. Of course, Saudi Arabia is the most important of it. We'll have as well a growth, so today it's 1.2 million, and it will go up to about 2 million. So, high targets, very high targets, and we need to achieve this strong entrepreneurial spirit to achieve that. So, how do we do that? I have brought several small and maybe bigger examples for that. First, all begins and everything begins with the products. We have about 200 models in our markets. 200 models, nobody else has it. And we adapt the models to the need of the countries. So for example, if in Saudi Arabia we have a dust issue, which is clear due to the sand, we adapt the cars so that everything is fine. Different example, China. China is, as you've seen, the biggest country in the car business over the next years to come. And we have a very clear orientation. Here you see the growth will be going up to 30 million cars over the years to come. And we believe that our strategy, which is based on two orientations, one is the Western strategy in China, the other is the Southern strategy in China, will give us the possibility to come to our growth. So we just have announced the creation of 3 other plants. There will be others. And in 2014, we will have invested more than 14 billion euros into new products, into new plants to have the possibility to deliver more than 3 million cars. Another example, R&D. We have more than 30,000 people just in research and development. Can you imagine? And here you see the sites where we are working. So probably about 20 sites. So it's simultaneous engineering in permanence. Different cultures, different languages, different timing. Extremely complex. And we have just done one of our biggest projects in having a simultaneous engineering in China, in Mexico, in Wolfsburg, in Mladoboleslav. Very nice, very, very nice, but extremely complicated. Other example, our productions. We have more than 90 sites, and what you can see here, it's not sites only in Europe. We have a strong footprint in China, we have a strong footprint now in India. We just opened our new plant in USA as well, in Russia. But South America is strong as well, as it is in South Africa. Other example, to do this, you need to have a common engineering base. Because if not, complexity will kill you. So what is a common engineering base? It's our toolkits. We have 2 major toolkits, which gives us the base for the cars. I will not elaborate too much to that, because it's highly complex. But it just shows how we can get out 50, 60 models from the same base without having 100% differentiation for these cars. The other example, hybridization and e-mobility. What you see here is our target plan, 2012, 2013, 2014, 15. So we bring in there the newest and the most modern hybrids and the newest and the most modern e-cars into the market, starting with the e-cars in 2012 and in 2013. So if we come to a very quick conclusion, first is we have as a strategy a very big interest to have an improved balance of sales on a global scale, not on a local scale and not on a regional scale. We have a young model range and we are going for new markets. We have a global footprint on production. Very important, very important. That means as well that you need to understand different cultures. We just have opened our latest joint venture in Malaysia together with DRB HiCom. And please believe me, the culture in Malaysia has nothing to do with the culture in South America or in the United States. High flexibility, and as I said, the toolkit is playing an important role. We are going for the newest technology for our customers. We are the technology leader in the world in the car business. There just has been a study, and we have been granted to be the company. We have a very extended brand portfolio, and we love brands. We love brands, and I hope you love brands as well. So it's a big difference to drive a Bugatti, or to drive a Bentley, or to drive a Lamborghini, or to drive a Porsche, or to drive an MAN. We have a very robust financial situation. Our results in 2011 are not so bad, at least what we have announced for the first 3 quarters, and we shall see how the world will be in the end of the year. But now I come to a point which is probably the best and the most important one. To have an entrepreneurial spirit in our company, we need to have a better cooperation within. So what does it mean, entrepreneurial leadership for us? First, we have a very clear long-term vision. A 10 years, 12-year vision, totally unusual for a European company, we have developed and we have announced in 2008. Second, everybody in the company needs to understand it and needs to share it. So we are doing enormous efforts to get our 500,000 people behind us, and everybody understands it. When I say everybody, it is everybody. Every year we talk to them. We need to compare and to learn from the best. From the best in industries, from the best in IT, from the best in technologies, from the best in all of the items, and just make it better. This needs to be a very clear entrepreneurial spirit to be there. Thinking is very important, deciding is very important, but at the end of the day, the only thing that counts is just do it. So we need to make it happen, not just thinking. We have to have the most competitive team in all perspectives. Competitiveness in teamwork, competitiveness in all perspectives. And we need to have a logic that every day, we need to do something to become better. So when we go up in the morning, we need to have a clear logic. Something has to be improved during the day. And last but not least, we need to have, as a company, a very, very clear competitive will to win. A team which is not having a clear competitive will to win will never really come to its targets. So ladies and gentlemen, that is clearly what we're looking for. That's our strategy 2018. We want to be an environmental and economical leader in the global automotive industry, and that is where we're going for with a very nice brand implementation. So I hope you have got some information out of that, and I wish you a very nice day. See you later.
Christian, thank you very much indeed. Next up, we're going to hear from Ana Dutra. Ana is Brazilian. She has had a variety of very interesting roles in consulting organizations over the course of her career. Most recently with Korn Ferry as the CEO of their leadership and talent consultancy based in Chicago. So Ana brings an excellent perspective on the application of entrepreneurial initiative and personality criteria to the selection of top management. So let's hear from Ana.
Thank you, John. Good morning, everybody. First of all, I'd like to say it's an honor to be here for the second year in a row. And I'd like to thank King Abdullah bin Abdulaziz Al Saud and our friends at Sagia for taking the initiative to address such an important topic for governments, for organizations, and for academia, as entrepreneurialism is. When Thomas Watson Jr. was the CEO of IBM, one of his most senior executives led an initiative that ultimately did not produce the expected results. In fact, not only did not produce the expected results, but the company lost $1 million, which was a lot of money at that time. And that executive walked into Tom's office, and as they started to talk, and Tom started to ask, what did you learn from this initiative? He said, why don't we move on and you just fire me? Because that's what's going to happen, right? And Tom's answer was, why would I fire you after just investing $1 million in your education as an entrepreneur? And that set the tone for the kind of culture, for the kind of company that Tom wanted to lead at that time. Over the course of the last 25 years, I've had the pleasure in working with companies on growth strategies and on performance to coach, lead, and develop a number of phenomenal leaders, inventors, and entrepreneurs. And here's what I learned. Great leaders are the ones who set the vision, they mobilize the troops, they are wonderful with people, they understand the business, they understand the operational levers, and they make it happen. The great inventors are creative minds. They are always producing ideas. They fall in love with them, but not necessarily all of them are commercially viable. Great entrepreneurs are the ones who see the opportunity where we don't see. They have this incredible ability to look at a scenario, look at an economy, look at the marketplace, and spot opportunities, take risks. These are people who actually thrive in changing times. They thrive under challenge. They take the risks. And more than anything else, they know how to gather the resources to make those initiatives happen. They are fearless, but they only succeed under certain conditions. So let's think about some of those visionaries, some of these people who we know, right? Think about Henry Ford, Steve Jobs, Thomas Watson himself, Sir Richard Branson, Walt Disney. What do they all have in common? First of all, as I said, they spotted the opportunities. They spotted the opportunities and they found the resources and they found the people to support them. The other thing is that all of them suffered phenomenal setbacks along the way, but they were all optimists and they all believed in what they were doing. So they kept going. And then they recognized who they needed to surround themselves with to succeed. They recognized that they didn't have everything it took to take their endeavors, to take their companies to the next level. So not only they learned from their experience, so they were incredibly agile in understanding what they had to do differently, but also they had a great deal, they demonstrated a great deal of self-awareness. That's what's going to distinguish the good entrepreneurs from the great entrepreneurs, because you know what? Those are the ones we know. How many just got to a point where they had to either sell or close their businesses because they did not have the ability to take it forward? Then the next leap is to take that to be a great leader, right? So now let's add context to that. We're living in what I'll call a VUCA world. So it's a world full of volatility, uncertainty, change, and ambiguity. And I just said that entrepreneurs thrive in this world, this type of environment. But it's not just up to them. I think that the main reason why we are here is to debate and understand as we identify the profiles, the initiatives, the organizations who have the culture to drive entrepreneurialism, what can governments do? What do organizations that truly, truly encourage and foster entrepreneurial mindsets do that's different from the ones that don't? What can we do for individuals who have that vein from the beginning? So governments and societies who are truly committed to developing entrepreneurs, they fund programs. They associate themselves with academia and with corporations to make that happen. They understand what initiatives will set the tone for entrepreneurs to succeed with ideas that are economically viable. I'm not defending fund everything, fund with filter, fund with accountability. Organizations that nurture entrepreneurialism, they develop a very special type of culture. It is a culture that encourages people to take accountable risks. They recruit people who have an entrepreneurial vein, and more than anything else, they give them space to grow, because it is not easy for a global organization to either buy a small company or hire somebody who has tremendous entrepreneurial spirit and not suffocate, not kill that individual along the way by submitting him or her to processes, to bureaucracy, to their way of doing business. Entrepreneurs need space. They need space with accountability. And with individuals, what can we do for them? We can start really early. We can start in schools by teaching problem solving, by teaching people how to take protected risks, how to take accountable risks. And that, again, the best way to get there, and the countries and the organizations who are doing best are the ones that ally government, academia, and corporation. Now, just one more point, which is the question that I get all the time, which is around nature or nurture, right? Are people born entrepreneurs? Are they wired that way? Or can we create entrepreneurs? And I'll give a personal example. I have 3 daughters. 2 of them work for organizations. My youngest one, who is just 11 years old, has created her own business of accessories because she realized that the kids in her school who received some sort of allowance wanted to buy accessories, but the ones sold in the market were too expensive for them. So she created her own business. She does her own designs. She created her own website, something that I would not be able to do. And she created an agreement with PayPal, and she receives their money through them so that she doesn't have to run after her classmates, charging them for the merchandise that she delivered. She's wired that way. However, that's an exception. We can foster, we can create, we can educate entrepreneurs if we want to. All of us have something in it that, if nurture, can enable us to systematically and consistently look for the opportunities, look for the new ideas, look for what are the risks we can take and what is economically viable. So what I'll invite you to do over the next couple of days is let's think about ways to identify those people who are out there, because I guarantee to you, in all your positions, they're right under your noses. And what we can do as leaders, as heads of organizations, as heads of state, to actually nurture, develop, and have entrepreneurs thrive in our environments. Thank you very much.
So, Anna, I think one of the key points you're making is that it all begins in the education system at a very early age. And if in our classrooms in primary school our children are not being given the opportunity to speak up and take risks at that level, maybe later on they're not going to be so easily able to take those kind of risks in life.
That's absolutely right, John. And think about the fact that our tendency is to do exactly the opposite, right? Children are incredibly creative, and we tend to shut them off and to box them in what we want them to think about.
Mm-hmm. So our next speaker, I'm going to ask Fadi Handor to say a few words. Now, you know, everybody here knows, I think, or should know the fantastic success story of Aramex, and I've been fortunate to know Fadi for, I think, more than 10 years now, and follow the path of growth that Aramex has traveled to the point now of being listed on the Dubai Exchange. But I'm going to be a little bit unfair, and in light of what Anna just said, when you were a child in school, Fadi, were you a model pupil, or did you cause your teachers a lot of problems?
I was not planning to answer that question. But, no, I was a terrible student, and a rebel at that, and thus my entrepreneurial journey. But I just want to take a bit of a different perspective from what Anna said. Anna, if we had given her a couple of more minutes, she would have covered all the issues on entrepreneurship here. So I practically had all my points taken by her. So, but which gives me the opportunity to really take this into a place where the Arab world is today, and where it matters for most of us and most of you that are sitting here and listening. You know, Bouazizi was an entrepreneur, and he's probably the first entrepreneurial martyr in the Arab world. And we need to address the entrepreneurial issue by going all the way down to earth and making it a reality, so that we address the issues that the youth of this Arab world are facing today. That's what matters for us today. That is the biggest challenge that the Arab world, and in fact the world, if you want, is facing today. What do we do with our youth, and how do we make them move from a mentality and an education that thinks only public sector into thinking that private enterprise is legitimate, it's good, and to be an entrepreneur is a good career that you want to risk your life into. Now, we talk a lot about the challenges, and we talk a lot about the problems that we are facing and we face every day. But I want to step back for a second and tell you about a successful story about building an entrepreneurial culture in a country that I know well and that I have come from. So as we complain about governments all the time, I would like to, and I always do, I am the biggest complainer, if you've heard me speak before. But there is a success story in Jordan. It is a country that has and produces more entrepreneurs as a percentage of in the Arab world, and more successful stories of entrepreneurship for a reason. And let me give you an example of the ICT industry in Jordan. Back about 12 years ago, when His Majesty King Abdullah II acceded to the throne, the private sector produced a document that says, here's what needs to be done. It was called the REACH Initiative. Here's what needs to be done so that we can create a technology and an ICT industry in Jordan, so that we can move the country into the 21st century, into the knowledge economy. It had specific issues related to infrastructure, to legislation, to investment, to education, and everything else. And it also said that contrary to what we normally do, we're not going to wait for the public sector to take the lead on this. This is going to be a national effort, a public and a private sector initiatives that brings everybody into the game. The government becomes a regulator where policy and politics converge, because we talk a lot about policy, but if there is no political will, policy will never happen. And then the private sector goes out and actually implements. So 12 years later, ladies and gentlemen, the industry employs about 80,000 people in Jordan. It is about 14% of our GDP, and it has an exports of about $200 million, and creates revenues for the industry of about $2 billion dollars per year. That is a success story. Today, if you come to the Gulf or if you go to the West, many of the IT professionals and many of the IT and technology industry entrepreneurs have come up from the Jordanian infrastructure, if you want. They, what happened? Why did this happen? Other than the public-private, non-profit, civil society partnership, it created that ecosystem of venture capital, angel investors, private sector stepping up and becoming advisors, if you want, and investors themselves in these startups. The public sector opened up the IT industry. There was competition. There was competition. It was opened up, and the government created an independent regulator. And when you opened up the IT industry and the telecom industry, you effectively have lower costs that enable entrepreneurs, and everybody comes to invest in that industry. At the same time, it allowed for 100% foreign ownership without restrictions. 100%. You don't need the capital of foreigners. You need their knowledge. So when you allow them to own 100%, they will come and invest in your country and thus create that entrepreneurial spirit that they have learned in their own original countries. And thus you create you create the jobs that we so much need. At the same time, we have celebrated entrepreneurs. As much as our media dislikes private enterprise nowadays and talks about it as the mean-spirited people who are mostly greedy, but some of our media suddenly embraced some of the entrepreneurs and made them a role model. And when you make an entrepreneur a role model, then everybody becomes and takes it seriously and thinks, well, maybe when I grow up, I will become a role model, an entrepreneur myself. So when Maktub got acquired by Yahoo, Maktub, for those of you that don't know, was the largest Arabic online community, was acquired for a substantial amount of money by Yahoo. It established confirmation by our young entrepreneurs, by our governments, that actually the knowledge society and creating a business on the internet actually can make sense. You can make money. You can make a lot of money if you're an entrepreneur that starts that business. The knowledge economy is actually here. And these two entrepreneurs were celebrated. It was front page news in our newspapers. King Abdullah himself gave them medals. When was the last time that you heard a government official gave medals to any entrepreneur in the Arab world? So we created a story. And now you have tens and tens and tens of entrepreneurs that are popping out of Jordan. Every single person who wants to invest in the ICT industry in the Arab world has to visit to Jordan. It has become the place to visit for entrepreneurship. That is because it was a national effort, public, private, and NGOs. That is what the Arab world needs to do today in all industries. And that's how we move from the being scared of the Arab awakening to putting together a solution for the youth so that they can feel that there is hope in their future. Thank you.
Fadi, could you just say a word if you could? Because
I'll talk about myself now.
Yeah, but not necessarily. But I want to hear a little bit more while we have you about the relationship of NGOs to these public-private sector initiatives. And I know that you have been yourself very much involved in the NGO arena in promoting entrepreneurship and social enterprise.
And that's a fantastic question, John, and thank you for that. But what I mean by the civil society or NGOs is by us entrepreneurs, us people who made it, and others who did not really, who become activists and feel that this is a national challenge, this is our challenge, this is our neighborhood, these are our children. When we feel that, then, and we feel and we understand that this is not the job of the public sector, because many of us sit and complain about governments all the time. Well, if the government is not doing its job, then you have to do it yourself. So you become an activist, you create an organization that actually empowers entrepreneurs. So there is a person in Jordan that's Maher Qaddura, who is a brilliant business person, retired from his job and created an organization called Maidan, which is a non-profit organization that supports the very young entrepreneurs at the bottom of the pyramid. And then there's Endeavor, the global organization, that was also came to Jordan and championed by Jordanian entrepreneurs, creating that whole civil society that says national development is a national issue. It is not a specific sector's issue. And thus, the tripartite relationship and partnership between the public and the private and civil society is such an essential time. So it's not a time of complaining, it's a time of doing. Actually, by definition, that's very entrepreneurial. We will refuse the status quo and actually go out and do something about it.
Okay, thank you, Fadi. I'm going to go next, slightly out of order, if I could, and call on Magat Wade, because Magat is also, like Fadi, someone who is a very successful private sector entrepreneur, but also has played a considerable role already in the NGO arena and in social enterprise initiatives. Magat is from Senegal and has developed a number of brands of both beverage products and cosmetics, some of which are sold internationally. And I wonder, Magat, if you could pick up on where Fadi left off in terms of your own experience in both being a private entrepreneur, especially in Africa, as well as an NGO leader as well.
Thank you, John. First of all, hello, ladies. And Hala, if you're in there, please don't embarrass me this morning. And gentlemen, good morning. Where would I like to start from here? I mean, Fendi, everything you said is so right. But one thing I must say for me is that entrepreneurship for me is all about freedom. It's the freedom to basically make the world what you want it to be, to basically create your own reality. That's what entrepreneurship is for me. And I like to usually say, entrepreneurship for me, I can sum it up by saying, again, criticize by creating. Whatever it is that sucks in your life, and we all know that things do suck day in and day out, well, that's an opportunity. Go out there and build something to answer that problem of yours. We are lucky people because how many of us are right now laying on hospital beds or didn't have access to all the things that most of us in this room have access to? So from that standpoint, if anyone has the nerves to stand up and complain about something, I say, how dare you? Go back to whichever hole you came back from and just lay in there because you don't have a right to complain. So that's what entrepreneurship is for me. How did I get my own journey started? When Anna was saying, are you born an entrepreneur or do you become an entrepreneur? I seriously never really thought about that. All I can tell you, though, is I have had multiple opportunities to go and get an MBA, and I refused to go get an MBA because I believe an MBA is going to kill my entrepreneurial spirit. I have seen so many people go through the MBA process, and that's not where you learn to be an entrepreneur. I'm sorry for those of yours that I'm destroying your whole idea of being an entrepreneur. But what an MBA will help you do, though, is be some of the best finance person you've ever seen, be one of the best managers you've ever seen. That is very much needed at some point to really grow and expand a business. But is it what starts and makes a business thrive? I don't think so. Vision is what will do that for you. And I believe that entrepreneurs are those who have a vision. We do have this vision of a new reality. And because this is my third time at GCF, I will not bore you with my life story, but rather I'm just going to jump from one thing to another the way it feels to me, and until John asks me to stop, right? Anyways, another thing that I would have to say about entrepreneurship has to do for me with the fact that without entrepreneurs, the world will remain a zero-sum game, meaning you win, I lose, and vice versa. Where entrepreneurs really always just kick everything out. It's just, let's start everything all over again. And so, someone that I really respect very much had said at some point, entrepreneurs and what they create, meaning jobs, it's a matter of peace or war. and I take that very seriously. Without jobs, our societies are very much in danger. And who creates those jobs? I don't believe that corporations do create the jobs. As a matter of fact, most of the time, the job of a corporation is to try and automate as much as possible what they're doing. So entrepreneurs are the ones who create most jobs. So that is why we need them as well. John, I don't think I want to say much more.
That's terrific, and we can come back in the Q&A. But let me just follow up with one quick comment, if I may. You, I think, come from the Richard Branson School of Entrepreneurship. I've just been reading Richard's book, and one of the core messages in the book is that a lot of entrepreneurship is born out of frustration. That if you are sufficiently frustrated with something, you may be motivated to go out and do what's necessary to fix it. It sounds like you agree with that from
Absolutely.
your own experience.
Yes,
Yeah.
I do.
Okay, super. All right, thanks a lot, Magat, for the opening remarks. Thank you. So this was, as I thought it would be, the absolutely perfect setup, because I was hoping that Magat would say that an MBA doesn't get you anywhere.
Oh, and I forgot to say something, John.
Oh, okay. Oh, no,
No, I need to say something also. It's real quick. When you were saying earlier that I did things with the NGO world, well, besides criticizing the NGO world, I don't do much with the NGO world. One of the things that I'm most frustrated with right now, for example, is the fact that we have close to 500,000 aid workers floating around Africa, helping us poor Africans make a life of ourselves. And I'm like, if instead of us 500,000 aid workers sucking each year, each one of them between $100,000 and $150,000 between their salaries, flying around business class and everything, if I took that money, $100,000 and $150,000, and put it into the pocket of an African entrepreneur, well, 5 years from now, they would have created the millions of jobs that I need to be created in Africa that are not being created right now.
Okay, good. So Christian might not be able to sell so many SUVs to the United Nations, though, so be careful. Now, you said that you were tempted, but never took up the challenge of getting an MBA because you thought it might derail you. So our final speaker, of course, not only has an MBA, but even more, has a DBA as well. So Len Schlesinger is a longtime friend of mine. He and I were colleagues at the Harvard Business School, where he developed a great expertise in the management of service operations. But interestingly, unlike most of the Harvard faculty, he went out and walked the walk, and in a series of very high-level assignments for Obon Pun and the Limited in the States, proved his mettle, and then has, in the last few years, come back to academia as the president of Babson, just outside of Boston. So Len has a terrific 30-year perspective on entrepreneurship. I regard him as very much an entrepreneur within the academic business school community, and I think you have the ability, Len, at this point, to perhaps take what all of us have been saying and try and pull it together a little bit.
Well, thank you muchly, John, and thank you to our colleagues at Sagia for inviting me to participate. And most importantly, thank you for allowing me to go last, because it does give me the opportunity to try and integrate, summarize, and then fundamentally disagree with a lot of what's been said on the panel this morning. So let me go through 3 fundamental questions and try and separate them for you coming out of the presentation. First, I'm going to try and deal with this question of what is entrepreneurship, and are entrepreneurs born or made? Okay? And if they're made, where are they made? Okay? The second piece of it, dealing with the last presentation from Aramex about how do you encourage entrepreneurs in the ecosystem to be able to flourish and grow and develop and be active. And I look at those as 2 related but fundamentally different questions. So first of all, let me at least outline a basic proposition for you to at least chew on. In 1983, so this is not a particularly new idea, we're talking about almost 40 years ago, Peter Drucker, when he wrote about entrepreneurship innovation, said in that great book that there is all of this nonsense about entrepreneurs being born versus made, and it is nothing other than nonsense. That entrepreneurship is a method, Like any other method, it can be codified and documented, and if it can be codified and documented, it can be taught, okay? So as the president of a college, it is useful to actually have somebody suggest there is a method, it is empirically derived, and it can be taught. Otherwise, I'd have nothing to do in running a college. So that's one piece of the equation. Now the question is, what is that method? How does it get emergent? And then how does it get taught? Well, the method for us is quite different than what you hear and see if you stay up in the middle of the night because you have jet lag on one of these trips and have to watch an hour and a half of Bloomberg, where you get the first half hour of the Steve Jobs story, the second half hour of the Bill Gates story, and the third half hour of the Mark Zuckerberg story. And after an hour and a half, you have decided there is no way that you can ever be an entrepreneur. There is no way that entrepreneurship can ever be available to you because you just spent an hour and a half seeing 3 extraordinary human beings who've done extraordinary things, and you don't have the vision, you don't have the energy, you don't have the capacity, you don't have the big idea. And my argument is that that's sheer nonsense. Sheer nonsense. Entrepreneurs have the capacity to make and find opportunities to create economic and social value everywhere. And that's what we're all excited about. And the method that you identify associated with that looks nothing like the method you read in the entrepreneurship hero worship books. Nothing. What do you hear in the hero worship books? I had this incredible idea, I risked everything, I mortgaged my family's assets, and I was hanging from a mountain waiting for a customer to call. If the customer hadn't called, I would be bankrupt, but they called, and now I'm famous, and I'm writing a book so that this is accessible to you as well. Muhammad Yunus argued it quite differently. Muhammad Yunus, the godfather of microfinance, argued that we are all entrepreneurs, and too few people get to practice it. And my job as the president of an institution is actually to develop methodologies to be able to articulate it, define it, educate, and practice it, both at the undergraduate level and even at the MBA level. And so how do we do that? Well, the first thing is it requires us to recognize explicitly that this notion of entrepreneurs as significant risk takers just doesn't hold. That entrepreneurs, by and large, don't take significant risks, and the risks they're taking, they actually know how to reduce and syndicate in a variety of different ways. And we've seen countless number of successful serial entrepreneurs who've demonstrated the capacity to be able to reduce aggregate risk levels going in. Number two, they are less oriented, much less oriented on having this big vision, okay? And they're much more oriented on starting something with the means they have. Who they are, what they know, who they know, and what they've got in their pocket. They start with their means, not with their ends. They take action and they look and learn from each step in the process of moving forward. Number three, they bring other people along and they recognize that entrepreneurial ideas are not individual ideas, but by and large are collective and group-oriented ideas, and they come from the interactions with customers and friends and potential investors. It is those interactions that stimulate the co-creation that creates enterprises and creates markets. So very, very different picture, and each one of those steps, starting with your means, figuring out how to bring other people along, figuring out how to actually determine what you're willing to invest to go into an enterprise in terms of time and money and energy, are radically different than things you read in the hero worship books. And all of those things are teachable. If you accept the basic proposition that entrepreneurship is the most powerful man-made force to create economic and social value everywhere, you begin to recognize that you have a moral responsibility to bring the logic of entrepreneurial thought and action to as many people as is possible in the world. And that's a large part of how I spend my day and how we spend our time at Babson College. Figuring out how to codify and organize and diffuse the methodology to as many people as possible. And that's the methodology associated with recognizing that we can run a college in Wellesley, Massachusetts, but it's also the methodology that recognizes that for 5 billion people in the world, this is their only source for an education. And the ability to integrate, codify, download, and create apps that can provide accessibility to entrepreneurship methods to a whole bunch of people who have heretofore been distanced from that. Now, the question of how you create ecosystems to be able to support this is a uniquely complex issue. And there are no generalizable conclusions that I can derive about the creation of entrepreneurial ecosystems other than the core one. In the United States, we had a Congressman, Tip O'Neill, who was always fond of saying all politics is local. I would argue that all entrepreneurship is local. And in the construction and logic of building ecosystems of support for entrepreneurial activity, recognizing the variables that we can play with in terms of government and angel networks and educational systems, and all the other resources that are available in a community to be able to nurture and build entrepreneurial activities, we need to construct locally appropriate and locally defined solutions. There is nothing worse and there's nothing more frustrating for me than to fly around the world and meet another group of government officials who are talking about building their own version of Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley was not created, okay? Silicon Valley was not created intentionally, okay? It just happened, okay? And so the notion that you're going to replicate something that just happened by actually creating it as if you understood it is just absolutely poppycock. So where we find ourselves at this point, as I add to this group, entrepreneurs actually can be trained and can be developed, and it is incredibly important to recognize the difference between entrepreneurship, the method, and entrepreneurs who start businesses. And I would argue increasingly that entrepreneurship needs to be considered as a life skill for all of us to be able to develop our capacity to manage the adaptability and flexibility that is available to us or required of us to cope with a world that is increasingly uncertain and increasingly mysterious. Those capacities to be able to reduce risk, to take steps, to learn from those steps, is an essential part of that entrepreneurship method. So we have the method, we have entrepreneurs as individuals who start enterprises, who grow enterprises, who find themselves inside large enterprises, who create social innovation, all using that same method, and we need to construct locally appropriate ecosystems to be able to support those activities.
So I think, Len, your point early on about attainable role models was very, very well taken. And I want to ask George, if I may, going back to your earlier remarks. It sounded to me, listening to Len's description of an entrepreneur, that person could fit very easily into 3M. Is that right?
Yes, I think the answer is correct. We have so many sort of different end markets, so many different technologies, and I would agree with Len that entrepreneurs aren't necessarily born, they are created. And when you put them in the right kind of environment where they can flourish, they can be encouraged, where they have access, in our company in particular, where they have an access to an ecosystem which can sort of, has a sort of historical memory of things that have gone before, have got capabilities that they may not alone have. It really works actually very, very well. So, in fact, it's one of the great debates in some parts of the world. In Europe, you know, they think that the only people that can innovate are small and medium enterprises, but actually it's not true. If you create an environment inside a company with sufficient ecosystem, Len then is in fact absolutely right. You can do it inside a company, you can do it well. The key is the leadership of the company that creates an environment where people can try, can fail, can succeed sometimes. And in our company, very few things are ever really full failures. So for example, we might try a development, we move it so far forward. We have so many different technologies and so many different end markets that nearly always 2 years later that is picked up by somebody and replicated into a new product. So I'm with Len that I think it can be taught, it can be learned, but you have to be in an environment where it can succeed and be protected.
Okay. Christian, is there anything special at VW that facilitates the entrepreneurial spirit there compared to 3M from what you've heard from George?
You know, I don't know what 3M is doing in detail, so I cannot answer to the question in comparison. The only thing what I know is we are a big company. And being a big company, you always have the tendency to become bureaucratic. And you have this typical sclerosis items. So you're getting slower, slower, and slower. And we get over-controlled, and we get as well over, let's say, look to reduce freedom. That is the tendency of all big companies. So our work is very simple to do the things against it. Make it happen, give the people much more freedom, let them make errors, let them get for the spirit, train them sometimes when needed, and push them as well to think much more behind. The vision counts. We need to have a strong vision. When you have a strong vision, people are coming to that. So our biggest work over the last 5, 6, 7 years is to enable people to do that, and that not is in one country, but in 153 countries. So this is enormous complicated due to the cultural differences. So if we can achieve that, nobody can beat us. The biggest problem and the biggest risk what we have is ourselves. And that is what I think what's important. I just have 2 other remarks. I think freedom is very important. The freedom to think, the freedom to speak, the freedom to listen. Very important. Training is important, but I'm sorry guys, if that were the case that an MBA is giving very good entrepreneurs, the US would have not had the crisis as well. So let's be honest, Harvard Business School. So I think it's a mix of everything. That's not one receipt, but there needs to be the conditions given by us as a company to people. Go for it. If you have a good idea, just do it and make it happen. And sometimes you have some resistance. Okay, break it.
Okay, so let me, we'll go to the audience for some questions in a couple of minutes, but let me first pick up on George and Christian. So you have at 3M and you have at Volkswagen a great ecosystem where people can develop their entrepreneurial capabilities. But going back to Fadi's point, that there aren't many VWs and 3Ms in the Middle East. How can we develop this young talent in the region where we know that there is so many people, young people who have the energy but don't have the opportunity? Can we just say to them, well, go out and seize it? Is that enough, or do we have to do more?
No, going out and seizing it is like saying, you know, jump without knowing what's below you. With all due respect to my friends here, VW and 3M are irrelevant in the region, really, for us to learn from. We don't need to learn from Western companies how to do business or how to become entrepreneurs. There is an entrepreneurial tradition from the days of the Prophet Muhammad, actually, being the first entrepreneur. So let us learn from our neighbors, let us learn from our own companies. One thing that we've struggled with over the years is our business schools continue to teach us case studies that were produced by Harvard on Western companies, rather than creating our own case studies for our own entrepreneurs, for our own success stories. We have plenty of success stories. Let's celebrate them, let's document them, let's learn them. Let's learn from our neighbors, from the people that have done it in the region. That's where we learn. 3M is a great company, but it's a great company for its own purposes. We need to create our own great companies in the region, and there are plenty of them, and we need to celebrate them, and we need to document them. I need to also say that there is a method to creating an ecosystem. I am disagreeing with my friend here. If Silicon Valley is an accident, then let's learn from that accident and learn from that method and come and implement it. We don't need to reinvent the wheel here. There have been many countries that have actually gone out and created ecosystems purposefully. We don't want to create ecosystems by accident and wait for them to happen by accident. In the 21st century, in the age of the internet, everything is learnable. We don't have to implement by details everything that we see. We can always customize, and this is the age of mass customization, right? So we can take a model and make it local and localize it and Arabize it and make it happen. So we don't need to go through a long process of learning. If somebody else has done it, let's take that method and see how it applies locally. So we need to do that, and we need to not think that this is some incredible thing that is very difficult to create. It is policy, it is a national effort. If everybody realizes that development, I'm not talking about entrepreneurship, because entrepreneurship is only a small part. It's not a small part. It's a good part of development. When we decide that it's a national effort, that every single individual, especially the successful ones, especially people in the private sector, think that their country is their country and they need to be part of that development process, then we can create that ecosystem that replicates the Silicon Valleys of this world.
Thanks. And Magat, could I ask you from a West Africa perspective, Do you agree with what Fadi has said? What are the main obstacles to someone who's trying to start out as an entrepreneur in West Africa?
So I want to start out by saying that I agree with Andy 500, 1,000%. Absolutely.
That's emerging markets speaking.
I think that's a strong vote of agreement.
Yes. And then, because I think that unfortunately, what the West doesn't seem to understand too often, and they're very bright people, very well-intentioned, but what I feel that they don't understand is the need for each one of us. It's one thing to do business and do very well for yourself. It's another one to have pride while doing it. And I don't think that the West, unfortunately, oftentimes tends to forget about that piece. And so that's why everything that Fandi said matters so much. And the other thing is, let's be honest. Look around this room. We are a diversified group of people that together form the human race. So the way you want to do business in America is not going to be the way I need and want to do business in, let's say, Senegal, my home country. So it is very important then that us entrepreneurs, as we're building our companies, we build it in a way that does also work along our customs and along our culture. So in trying to doing business in Senegal, yes, of course, we run into a lot of problems. You know, some problems are related to the government, some problems are related to the talent pool, all of that. But you don't, again, true entrepreneurs do not let that stop them. Because guess what? If I have a problem with talent pool in Senegal, I can convince some people from different parts of the world to come and join me there, help me train over there. I can build a complete, to train people on the ground on my own. Government, again, whoever said that as an entrepreneur, you have to go out there and everything is going to work out? That's not what it is. Last time I checked, entrepreneurship is all about fixing problems from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed, and never knowing what's going to hit you. So this type of question, I'm not very good at answering it, because at the end of the day, there is nothing that you really can plan, on the journey. You go out there, you do your best, and most importantly, you try to find new solutions to problems.
Okay, thank you. George, a quick comment?
Yeah, I just want to put to bear the notion that a company like 3M is an American company. This is a company that has 70% of its sales outside the United States. The people that report to me, the 12 people or so that report to me, only 4 of them are Americans, and I'm a Brit. So the sort of the richness of the management team is very much a sort of worldwide view of these things, and whether that's, we have people from every single continent, most of the major countries, and in our top 120 managers, about 80% of them are not born inside the United States. So it is a company which has found a way to sort of completely diffuse, completely disperse its management capability, and it brings a sort of tremendous richness to the discussion, to the thought processes. So we don't think like a sort of American company living in Minnesota or California. It's not how we are. It's not who we want to be. I do think that in a location like this one, government can build pieces of the infrastructure to lubricate, because ultimately, when you're a long way from mama and you're trying to get something done, you do need some sort of help from people. And if that infrastructure, that ecosystem is available, it really is a lot easier. Certainly our company, and to the extent we can do it, we're glad to help. There's a lot that we can teach companies trying to sort of get going in this sort of area. It's very much a feeling of ours that we'd like to help other people and grow in these sorts of areas. We're quite strong now, but we'd love to do more. But I think it's just interesting to note that really in our company, it's just a gigantic incubator of all sorts of different technologies. All sorts of things are possible. Anything is considered. And in many ways, we are a real world company, and in our parts of our company have microcosms of the kind of things that are being talked about today. It would be completely wrong to think of 3M as some sort of classic American sort of standard sort of red, white, and blue company. Very, very different than what you might imagine.
Okay. And Anna, I think it would be useful at this point to have a little bit of a reflection from you, because I think Len took on some of the some of the statements that you had made earlier, so perhaps a chance to respond on what makes for an entrepreneur.
You know, I'm here listening to this debate, right, and thinking, well, I've lived the two worlds because I was born and raised and worked in Brazil. So my first work experiences were certainly in an emerging economy, and quite frankly, at a time where we were called an underdeveloped country. And we had to exercise tremendous creativity and resourcefulness to just get things done, things that in any other country would be just matter of fact. We had to be tremendously tenacious, creative, ingenious. And then at some point, I moved to the US, right, where I did go to an MBA, and I am a big proponent of learning. And there's a huge difference between learning and copying. So clients come to us, and they're frequently asking for best practices and benchmarks, right, in each and every area that you can think about. And what I always warn is, that is great that you're asking for that, and let's look at who is doing what, where, but with a learning open mind, but also knowing that what works in a particular community, economy, or culture is not necessarily going to work somewhere else. So I actually want to take an in-between here, which is always be open to learn. I don't care if it is formal learning through an MBA or learning from a particular company or country, but the key is to have critical thinking. The key is to have discernment about, number one, it's not about copying, and number two, what worked somewhere else not necessarily is going to work in my situation, in my country, in my environment. So I think that's what distinguishes the good entrepreneurs from the great entrepreneurs, is this openness to the world in general. It's not just about seeing what I personally, individually, see as an opportunity, but always having my ears open to what worked somewhere else. What worked at 3M in an incubator environment, for example? What works in China, Brazil, US? What worked for the people who did not have any education, but also what could be learned from the ones who do? So that to me is all this. I'll go back to the point that I was making. It's all about learning agility, but combined with self-awareness so that you're not blindly copying things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, terrific, terrific. All right, let's get a couple of questions from the audience, if we may. Now, I just want to remind you, and I have to do this every year when I come to Riyadh, that a question is a single sentence that ends with a question mark. And if we call on you to ask a question, we're short of time, so please succinctly present the question, okay? Now, is there anyone who would, given those criteria, like to get us off to a good start here? Anyone? All right, let's go with the gentleman 2 tables back with his hand in the air. Get him the microphone, please. Don't let me down now, okay? Single sentence ending in a question mark.
Okay, my name is Haytham. My question to Mr. Christian, in a big company like this, how can entrepreneur rally up his team on the mission of the company and cascade the vision and the strategy?
I think we are living in a permanent contradiction. On one side, we need to be very structured, we need to be very quality-oriented, and we need to have a very clear organization which is delivering everyday service. So, for example, we have 80 million customers a year in our workshops. That's one thing. So it's a very organized organization. On the other side, we need to find a way of management to leave the pockets of freedom to our people, that they can have this entrepreneurial spirit. And we need to balance that. But this is probably the most complicated thing we have in our management. And in the end of the day, probably I come back to what was said before, we need to have a vision. If the vision is clear, the energy goes to the vision, and the people are really driving it to this. And we're driving it to a permanent, contradictional management. And this is something which is probably the most complicated, but from my point of view, the only way to manage a so big company in being in a contradiction of having standardized processes, but have the need as well to recreate the company permanently to a new level.
So I think one way of putting that in a very straightforward way is, and I've heard this said a couple of times in other companies, no one in this company gets promoted for breaking the rules, but no one ever gets to the top for following the rules. In other words, there is a capability to bend without breaking. Would that be something you'd agree with, Christian?
This is certainly one of the...
Even in a German company, is that possible?
Why not? Again, France.
Okay.
I don't know how often you've worked in Germany, by the way.
Yeah. George, what do you think of that?
So.
I agree.
Just toss a few Brazilians in there.
Well, I have I don't know if I sort of pick it up. I think, first of all, you know, if you want to try to find a way to get on in a corporation, I have a kind of a theory about, you know, how you get on in corporations. I am, by the way, if I look at myself, a bit of a maverick. Now, others might not think that way. And I sort of think in a corporation, there's a sort of an acceptable core where most of us have to stay for most of the time. I think there's a kind of a donut around that, a donut ring around that, where picking up a phrase of George Bernard Shaw, he said, you know, the reasonable person adapts himself to the system, the unreasonable person adapts the system to himself, ergo all change is made by unreasonable people. Now, you don't want to be unreasonable all the time, so I think outside that central core is a kind of a donut where you can go, and you better not spend too long or go there too often, but you can go there to change the corporation and make changes, because they are the people ultimately, I think, that move up the corporation and become the real movers and shakers in a place like 3M or a place like Volkswagen. It's about balance. It's what I call, in the sort of the children's story of Goldilocks, the baby bear strategy. Not too hot, not too cold, not too salty, not too sweet. You need to do it not too much, just enough.
Got it. Question from the audience, please. The gentleman directly in front of me. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Imad Al-Jadali from the International Medical Center. Two quick questions for Mr. Christian from Volkswagen Group. One of them is, as you know, in Saudi Arabia, we're suffering from car accidents. Any plan working with non-governmental organization in dealing with such an issue? And this will open a lot of entrepreneurship ideas in the kingdom. The second question is R&D. Any plans to have an R&D here in the region? We have a lot of smart Saudi scientists here. We're not anymore consumers. Thank you.
Okay. First, the accident, we do have driving schools all over the world. So we do have driving schools for Porsche, we do have driving schools for Audi and so forth. And it's a fun. If you go for a driving school for Porsche, you have different levels. So the beginners are there and the real professionals. And I don't know if you've ever done it, driving with a professional at the side. Normally, it's a moment where you have a good distance and a good fear as well. So yes, could it be possible that one day and another driving school could come here to Saudi Arabia? Yes, why not? Would be certainly a good idea. We just create two in the United States. Even Americans need to drive. And they have fun with this, and the same in China. So that's maybe for the first remark. The second remark is, we do have an R&D center now in about 20 countries. It is extremely important for an R&D center to have very good universities at site. That is the key for everything. So could it happen one day or another? Why not? But it is very important that only the best engineers, and we don't care about nationalities, because I think you have about 80 nationalities in our engineering, are really coming to us. And could it happen one day or another? Why not? It's not a question, and that is over. It's not a question of geographic aspect. It's really the only question of capacity and of professional approach. So why not?
Yeah, just want to underscore that from my China perspective, the investment in R&D centers by multinationals at the moment in China is phenomenal. And much of it is a function, yes, of the market size, but also a function of the university quality that these R&D centers are able to associate with. Let's see if there's another question. The ladies section, any questions on my left over here before we go back to the center? I think there's one lady on the periphery there. Can we just take your question, please? Very quickly.
My name is Reem Shaath, and my question is for Mr. Fadi Ghandour. Since we're talking about the entrepreneurship imperatives, don't you think that passion is absolutely important to ensure the success of an entrepreneur?
No.
Why?
No, look, passion is important, it's good, it's fantastic, but if you don't have it, it doesn't mean you're not going to be an entrepreneur. I am a firm believer, as we heard earlier, that entrepreneurship is actually completely learned, totally learned. If you might start as not having learned it, but you will learn it on the job, and you will do a heck of a lot of mistakes until you become an entrepreneur that is successful. So passion is good. You know, you rally the troops, you can, but if you read Jim Collins' book on good companies and great companies, etc., you'll find that charisma is, and in fact, Peter Drucker always warned us: beware of charisma. It's you know, it's methodical, and there is a process for it. And if passion is there, then fine and dandy. If it's not, don't worry about it.
Len, what's your view on that?
I couldn't agree more with Fandi. Passion makes for marvelous movies, wonderful books, and hysterical dig-me lectures from entrepreneurs. But it is absolutely not a precondition for effective entrepreneurship. Now, I'll contrast desire with passion. There's no question that entrepreneurs have desire, but passion oftentimes causes people to do some very hysterical, stupid things.
Okay.
Well, Fandi, I've been with you most morning, but this is where you're kind of losing me a little bit, because maybe we don't have the same understanding of what passion means. But I do believe that without passion, you are going to have some hard days to stay with it, because sometimes it's hard.
I wonder if we change, if we replace passion with conviction and belief, if all our male colleagues here will feel more comfortable with that.
Yeah, and no, I mean, and let's not confuse passion with drive. You need a heck of a lot of drive.
Maybe we have a wrong word.
Yeah, so if you're passionate about it, good, and you're animated and you jump and do all sorts of weird things, that's fine. But that you need the drive, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a definition.
We've got time for one last question. I'm going to take the gentleman all the way halfway, 2/3 of the way to the back, just to spread it around a little bit. Can you just keep your hand up? Yeah, behind you. Yes, sir, you. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I have a general question. My name is Mansour Obeid from Tushir. Is there an age for the entrepreneurship? Because we have a lot of youth, they start their own game program and they upload it in app stores and they make a hell of money. There is a kids from Saudi and from Kuwait, they make some games and they make a fortune out of it. Is there an age for entrepreneurship or there is no age for it?
No age.
No age.
No age.
No age. That's, you know, you can start any, Walton, the founder of Walmart, became an entrepreneur at the age of 55 or 45 or something like that. He was much, he had already worked and done all sorts of things before he actually created the largest company on earth today.
Len, your view from your academic knowledge?
Absolutely, no question. If we look at the demography of entrepreneurship, for example, in the United States, the average, quote, entrepreneur running a small to medium-sized enterprise for example, in Massachusetts is 51 years old.
Wow. Okay.
So the notion that this is just a young person's game is just not accurate.
All right. So I think we're going to finish at this point. It sounds like no one here has any excuse not to be an entrepreneur. I want to thank the panel. I know many of you wanted to ask questions. We're going to have plenty more opportunity during the day for you to do so. Please catch up with the panel members once I thank them for their participation and for getting us off to a great start. Thank you.